So we thought we'd kick off the day with a quick overview of FME Desktop, and for those of you that haven't seen FME before, it'll be a little bit of an introduction, and for those of you that are FME users, we'll just have a quick look at some of the new functionality that we've been adding. But remember, today you do need to pay attention, stay awake. We will be having a quiz at the end of the day, so and there are numerous prizes, including the spork collections that you can keep on accumulating and so on. And you also do need to remember that the Zipster, when you put things up like your old Corgi toys and Matchbox toys, they're much more valuable if you keep them in the box. When you sell them on eBay, they become, and you never know, they might become collector's item. Next year the theme might carry on, and so we might be putting out jetpacks and Zipster guns to make the whole collection increase. So these might become precious items, I suppose. Here's the sound guy. That's as far as the budget goes for the movie. And if you go to the Esri user conference, obviously they have a bigger budget for these kind of things than we do. So the FME capabilities, obviously our role in life is to help you translate and transform your data, and that's something we're working on all the time. We started in the CAD and GIS world, added spatial databases, and we've kept on adding other spatial and non-spatial contexts to the kind of work that we can do. And more recently, focusing on cloud kind of formats, and so we'll be talking a lot about that throughout the day, and also non-spatial arena. So many people have been using FME for non-spatial tasks, and that seems to be a growing area. And so we're putting in some focus there on both the formats that we work with and the transformation tools that we're adding to FME all the time. We cracked the 300 mark on the formats this year for the FME release. The release that we're working with in our demonstrations today is the FME 2013 release, Service Pack 1. So normally we have a release every January, and then this year we kind of continued that release schedule, and we did put out a release in January and just more recently put out a service pack which has quite a few tools around the non-spatial arena, and hopefully we'll get time today to illustrate some of those. We're always working hard with our partners. Our role in life is to get these different groups talking nicely to each other, maybe in a literal sense as well. We're integrated into some of these platforms quite closely. If you're an Esri user, we're in there as the Esri interoperability extension, and we're always working on improving that and keeping it up to date with the latest release of Esri. This year we did quite a lot of work with other partners. Socrata added a reader and writer for that, and the Teradata folks. We've had a reader and writer in FME for quite a long time for Teradata, and this year we've been improving on that using one of their newer APIs. So working with partners is always an important thing for us. We focused on the two core products at SAFE, FME Desktop and FME Server. So just in this little session here, I'm just going to be giving a quick overview of FME Desktop. And later on this afternoon, Stuart, who's back there, will be giving an overview of FME Server, as well as throughout the day some uses of those from some of our users, and a fun track as well, which will come after the break. Of course, our focus in the FME Desktop is the FME Workbench application, where you lay down the workflows that we can use. And you'll see throughout several of the presentations today the idea of creating repeatable workflows. We've been doing quite a lot of work underneath the covers in Workbench. We've had to move to a new technology called Qt for the interfacing, and so That's something as a software vendor you just have to do and swallow. It's a long road to move the underlying technology, and for a long time the users don't see the benefits of that. But that will start to emerge in future releases. One of the spin-offs hopefully will be support for FME on a Mac or Linux. And the other thing that actually I find really interesting is that we're going to be able to improve on the nature of the dialogues that we have in our transformation tools and have more intelligent dialogues. So that's been something that we've been doing a lot of work in. You probably haven't seen too much benefit, but as we move forward, you'll see the fruits of all that hard work by the development team. So although we cracked the 300 mark on the formats this year, we still see that transformation is a major part of FME, and shifting the data model in the different ways when you move between different platforms or different formats and different spatial contexts. And so we're always putting in quite a lot of effort into the transformation tools in FME. And broadly, what we have is transformation tools around attribute transformations, geometric transformations, and then raster transformations as well. My light pen's given up the ghost here. The bottom illustration there shows one of the interesting things about FME, and that's merging data from different spatial contexts. So in that case, taking some point cloud data, maybe making a DEM out of that, overlaying a raster on that point cloud, and producing some sort of a 3D model, maybe a 3D PDF that you can hand out to people sort of so that they can see it more easily. And that's always an interesting part of FME. So we have the sort of traditional data translation and transformation tools, but you can also use FME sort of for bringing together data from very different contexts and merging them in interesting ways and producing hopefully interesting results. And we're always adding new transformation tools to FME. This year was no exception, so there was a big list of transformation tools, and also trying to bring together and merge transformers. We've done some work around this non-spatial context, so you're going to see today some work that we've been doing a lot on testing if-then-else kind of workflows and setting conditional values. So there's been quite a lot of improvements there. Map Text Labeler is a transformer that we added this year, which is technology put together by the Map Text folks, and we've integrated that into FME, and that allows you to put together more cartographic quality text in FME, and we'll be illustrating that as well. And around point cloud and some of the other areas that we've been working on, point cloud filter, point cloud expression evaluator, which sort of allows you to do interesting manipulations on the point cloud data in the same way that the raster expression evaluator is a very efficient way of doing expressions on raster data sets. We've also been around the sort of area of cloud-based data sets, also looking at sensor data, and so a couple of the transformers that were added, TCP/IP, sender and receiver, allow you to build workflows that monitor continuous sensor kind of information, water level sensors, vehicle sensors and whatnot. So those are transformers and an area that we've been pushing on this release. Of course, the actual core area of FME is around the data model transformation, and then underneath that is always our coordinate system transformations. Those are a fundamental part of FME. And this year we upgraded our coordinate projection engine, which is based on CSMAP to CSMAP 13. And that gives you a bit more, well, actually a lot more flexibility in the way that we handle datums in coordinate projections, and separates the datum from the coordinate projection a little bit. And so you have a lot more flexibility. So if your coordinate projections, if you're really kind of keen on that area, that's something that you should explore as the new tools in CSMAP, in the CSMAP 13 upgrade. So let's have a quick look at the FME 2013 and see what we've got there. And one of these tools here, there we go, the Data Inspector, is something that we've been working on a long time. So the two core applications that are in the FME Desktop are the visualization tool and the Workbench. And for quite a long time, we've been working on a replacement for the existing universal viewer in FME, and we call that the data inspector. And the motivation for that is to add 3D visualization to the inspection tool, because we've been increasing the amount of support for BIM and 3D formats. That's taken us a little bit longer than we would have hoped, and so we now think that the data inspector is ready for prime time. So this is the data inspector, and one of the great things that we've just recently added to that inspector, if you're currently an FME user, is a table viewer to the inspector. And that allows you to more easily look at non-spatial data, which is a big step forward to the old visualization tool. Now, if you're not an FME user, you're probably sitting there thinking, well, what's the big deal? That's a big table viewer. And it has taken us a long time to get around to putting this in. But for those of you that are FME users and you've been using the visualization tool, certainly recommend giving the data inspector a try and using the table viewer. And in FME Workbench, where I've got one up here somewhere, here we go. If you want to use that visualization tool or the data inspector, then you can go to the FME options, and then under the Workbench options, you can, not too much real estate on the screen here, you can see the inspection application, and you can switch the default from the universal viewer to the data inspector and start to play around with that. So I certainly encourage anybody who's been able to upgrade to Service Pack 1 to get going with the data inspector. So this is the sample data that we're going to use for a quick demo in Workbench. It's based on some electronic navigation charts around that we've loaded into a SQL Server database from S57 data. And with that, on the sort of theme of sensors, is I've loaded up some AIS data, which is automated identification systems that larger ships are supposed to ping off. So it's basically an international standard for GPS signals from ships as they move around. And so what we're going to try and do is pick up a few of these vessels, make a vessel track, and join it to a database, just to illustrate some of the functionality that we've got in FME Desktop and FME Workbench. So as always in Workbench, you have to add a new reader to start things off. We've got a new zoom slider tool here in the Workbench, which makes it a little easier to zoom in on the workflows that you're working with. So that's good. I'm loading in here a CSV data set. It's a non-spatial data set, so it's got just a lat long column in here. And so I need to make that, spatialize that in some way. So I can add some transformers that will spatialize that data, a 2D point adder and a point connector which will string the points together into a vessel track. And then if you've got data inspectors connected into your workflow when you run Workbench, you'll get those up in the new inspector if you make that your default, and you can see different aspects of the data. So we've got 3 vessel tracks that we're working with in this quick demo here. One of the things we added to 2013 is a smart delete. So if you are a Workbench user, when you now delete something from the workspace, it keeps the connection here, which does have benefits that if you've got a larger workspace, because it doesn't disconnect attributes and things that you've been working on. And so that's kind of handy as well. When you're adding transformers to Workbench, there's the Quick Add tool. So that's been in FME for quite a while. And that has been enhanced to allow you to not just do the Quick Add, which is really just searching the transformer names, but if you hit Tab, it'll switch over to a full search and do a full transformer search, which is the same kind of as doing a transformer gallery search over here. So you can play around with that a little bit. We're always working on adding sort of more tools in FME for working with databases. So of course you can always connect to a database by adding a reader and going, in this case, if we want to join to a non-spatial database, I can choose SQL Server non-spatial and pull up a table list of a vessel database, for example, and add that to my workflow here. And then in some way I might want to join that to my vessel track that I've just built with the point connector transformer. In this case here, I'm using one of the many transformers that we have for working with databases, and that's we're always improving on those, and I encourage you to explore those. The SQL executor, where you can throw pretty well any SQL call to a database, the inline querier, and the feature reader, a great tool if you want to do more sophisticated spatial queries, so always have a look at those. I'm using the new joiner, and many of the transformers based on our move to the Qt, we're giving an upgrade, and the joiner is one of them, where we've moved away from a bit of a lunky kind of wizard approach and summarized that whole transformer into a single panel. So hopefully those Qt changes will make life easier for you. So I'm using the joiner, which is sort of an easier to use transformer if you're not really familiar with SQL and those kind of tools. That's a good way of joining data to a database. And again, if we run that and bring the results up in the inspector, we can look at the vessel tracks, and there we've got some additional information that we've merged in here, the vessel tonnage and so on. And if we want to have a look at the location of the points on the vessel track, you can just click on them and see where the actual coordinates are in the inspector tool. And then, of course, as you have to write out to an output file, we can do that in oops, there we go. Writing out to, in this case, a GeoDatabase. Esri is always an interesting technology to write out to, because of the requirement when you're writing to Esri geodatabases to have to write out, you have to have an Esri install and an Esri license when actually FME reads and writes from that geodatabase. So a while ago, Esri released an API that allows people to access an Esri geodatabase without having Esri tools installed and without checking out a Esri license. So if you're a non-Esri user and people are delivering Esri data to you, using the file geodatabase, FME can read or write simple features to or from file geodatabases. We call that the file geodatabase API. I guess they're all APIs, but we couldn't find a better name for that. So the other file geodatabase is the ArcObjects API, which is the full-blown reader and writer for file geodatabases, and allows you to read more complex entities like annotations and relationship tables and so on. But give the API reader and writer a go. It's a little bit more convenient than the shape reader and writer, because that's another way of sort of delivering generic Esri kind of data, because you don't have the problems with attribute name truncation and upper and lower case and all those issues. And the file geodatabase is very fast as well. I think quite a bit faster than working with shape. And so I think that's probably about all we wanted to show just on FME Workbench. And so we can just move right over to our next part of our day. For those of you that are not familiar with FME and haven't been around us very much, there is a web page that you can go to, FME Getting Started, and encourage you to go there. It has kind of a nice way of leading you through how to learn more about FME, so if that's a good way to get started. And of course, the main thing is, if you are an FME user already, encourage you to always contact us at support. We're always there to help you, and if you get stuck on something, please do talk to us. Okay, so I think that's a quick intro to FME Desktop, and then we're going to